世间所有的相遇，都是久别重逢。
清风明月如怀抱。
So today is Sunday, right? In the past week, one of the biggest events, the visit of Carney, right, the Prime Minister of Canada, to China, and now I believe in Middle East, right? In China, they signed some sort of strategic partnership, right? It's kind of reopening, if you will, the relationships between the two nations, right? Politics apart, which I don't even know nothing. I don't watch news, and just this one is kind of significant to me in terms of AI and robotics, the related industries, technology, innovation, right? Finance, legal, regulatory, like the movement of like workforce, like people, robotics, obviously technology, how it's going to be the sort of the money is going to flow, right? Given this, I don't know how long it's going to last. Maybe just a gesture. There's going to be some twists and turns, but inevitably, right? It has to be living in a new reality where the major players, you have to be on the table, right? Which is why we put Canada as one of the 100 the significant individuals, or business, or institutions. In this case, it's Canada as a whole, right? I have so far heard any significant player in terms of AI and robotics, right, in Canada. Right? But I think it deserves to be recognized as a critically important, right, systematically important player that hopefully it's going to be really play that role, right, in a global AI and robotics roadmap, if you will. But in terms of how, right, this is why some of my thoughts and my proposals is nothing to do with politics, just purely looking at the AI, robotics, technology, and associated, again, what we're researching now, what we're building, the business part, right? The money is going to flow, right? The people will flow, right? The innovations. I guess, if you read the papers, if you watch the news, if you anyway closer to this, right? I think Carney proposed some sort of it's like a third place, like what I try to propose, right? Like I don't know, a lot of politically correct. Like Carney used to be a senior executive with some of the, I think Goodman sucks. I don't know. I forgot where it is. And also the head of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, and now it's the Premier of Canada, right? He certainly knows, right? Knows the domains and knows the significance of the current advancement of AI and robotics, right? And that is where we're going to cut in, right? There are many aspects we can't talk about, but our angle is AI and robotics, and how this AI and robotics going to be create a new workforce. That's my major focus. And from the individual level, like the person, right, to the business level, like if you are a startup or you're established, one of the 100 are going to put on the chart. I only find like 50 or so, maybe like, it's very, very numbered, like 52 or ish, maybe 50, more than that, not even 60 yet. I need the half, probably not existing yet, or very new, not recognizable. Equally important as Canada, right? So in this AI and robotics era, you have to view the individual or a country or a region, right, in a probably slightly different perspective. Much of the world do not really have the capacity even use this technology, let alone, being a significant player, right? But hopefully we're going to get in there. This is one of the events, but certainly there are others, right? So, let me read through that before we dive into what we want to talk about, right? And emphasize that this is a golden opportunity for Canada, if it is, not just a friendly gesture, and then it turns around and do that whatever, like they have been doing, right? Hopefully there are some. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of capable architects behind the scenes, right? How to shape where the country is supposed to be, right? But in any case, our focus is the technology, right? Let's see. In the past week, there are a number of things worthy our attention, right? I've been talking about IBM, right? Local first, enterprise AI, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang talked about the physical AI, and a lot of talks, right? If you put in a more like a week from Monday to Sunday, like today is Sunday, right? How do you look at it? In my opinion, right, it's more like a 7 steps to industrial greed of AI. So the biggest opportunity to Canada, right, as a big country but a small population, especially the skilled labor in agriculture, in manufacture, rich in resource, but hard to really build a world on top of that in terms of refining it. And it's kind of industrialization. If you remember, like Canada used to be a very powerful, industrialized, developed country. Somehow, look at manufacture, look at the automobile, right? Do we have any hope or chance to regain that? Like I use a term called re-industrialization. Yes, the answer is very firm. That is what AI and robotics can enable the country to re-industrialize, rebuild, build a new workforce. But critically important, I don't know if people realize it. You signed $1 trillion deal with China, long term, obviously, like EV and canola oil, resources, timber, whatever, right? A lot of stuff at play. But without a new financing model, allow the money to flow together with people and technology, right? Doesn't matter how many beautiful phrases you can come up with, it's not going to happen, right? But that has a lot of implications in terms of regulatory compliance, national security, you name it, the factor of financial. But my focus are limited. The financial world, AI, robotics, how it's going to impact that, and the legal is where I practice a lot, regulatory compliance, and to a certain extent, right, how the healthcare, the medical, scientific research, the hospitals, nursing, doctors, right, that's where I'm focused on. To a lesser extent, but you obviously try to get into the hospitality, try to build up. You might heard of the robotics business bar kind of thing, right? I'm going to talk more, right? Not just talking how to build the business, right? That's I'm not trying to influence anybody. Try to learn really and see how I can at least help, right? Help myself, if nobody else in the era of AI robotics, right? Then my community, right? And where I live, the region where I live, the industry where I've been working like 30, 40 years, right? So yeah, come back to the sort of 7 steps, right? So like a roadmap. So most importantly, there are 7 events in my opinion, right? Look at OpenAI, the pivoting to the enterprise AI. They developed, a capacity to workflow, right? Enterprise ChatGPT, if you will, right? That's we look at the complementary strings Anthropic, right? I think they play together, right? Like recently we talked about them, right? And on the Anthropic, the skills, the coding part, and the memory, they try to solve it, right? The context, they allow like some sort of longer context window, 200K or something, right? Same thing with OpenAI. Again, they're very similar, right? They're going to copy each other, right? Or work together. But again, when I try to conflating, many things together, sometimes it's just naturally come together, right? It's the one same. Right? If you look at it from different perspective, at least in my mind. And if you're a philosopher, if you are just a pure researcher, obviously you can optimize it, categorize it. But to me, they're all the same, right? I mean, because I need to use them right away and build businesses, and it's all the same, right? Like, you look at Dennis and Elon Musk, I might do a little separate thing, but I can blend in some of the thoughts here, right? The modularity, right? The Google DeepMind, they released a reasoning model, right? Focused in the high end mathematics, coding, obviously, and scientific study. There's a lot of math, right? Powers there. We modularize it. One of my proposals, how you, in a domain way, right? You have to make it more practical, plug and play, usable, right? Not just theory, right? All these companies, and I'm not calling them theory, they're more like a common utility, cover all kind of capacity building platforms. But for me, I have to use it, and I'm not going to use the whole power of and not try to boil the ocean or pretend I conquer the universe. No, that's not me. I don't have that power. I can use it to solve a real world problem, right? Like, how do I serve a coffee? How do I cook a meal? I'm pretty lazy. I don't have time for that, right? And how do I read a law contract, right? How do I make sure I can monitor the fraud, right? Make sure the crypto payment transaction goes so safely from Dubai to Singapore to Hong Kong to China, interacting. That's the target from the source, US, Canada, or elsewhere. Because if you want to do re-industrialization, you need manufacturing capacity. You need the AI robotics component supply chain, right? Assembly. I think one of the proposals Carney had in China, I don't know how they phrase it. It's more like a third place, right? Canada as a final assembly. I appreciate the way they're thinking, but I see the gaps like as wide as the Pacific Ocean. It's so disconnected, right? And as a financier, right, I understand that, right? The Carney has a vision, right? But it's going to be a lot of opponents, right? Different opinions, right? They're going to their mind. They're going to really hold down their whatever they have been grown up to like 60 years old. It's hard to change their mind, right? They're thinking a particular vantage point, right? How do you really work with them, right? It's hard, right? Again, I can be very, very curious and see how it plays out. But again, come down to the AI technology, right? That is where we say Canada has a role to play. You cannot make, I would not call it, it's not criticism. Like you look at IBM, we look at BAI and Microsoft, Foundry, they all seem to have fantastic visions, but, but fundamentally it's flawed. Right? Like Microsoft, you try to get hold of OpenAI. Do you think OpenAI is going to be like part of you? Not even a chance, right? Do you have your own kind of really AI capacity there? I don't think so. I don't see that. You have a foundry. So what? You have Copilot. I don't know. Like it seems to be smart. To me, that's a fundamental strategic error, right? Especially in the age of AI and robotics, right? You cannot take model like large language model, whatever multimodal, just a basics. No, or you want to build applications, you want to play with it, play smart. No, like they are the products alone. It is, really like you have many things. You have to start from the root, right? Not just try to dressing up like, as a beautiful tree, right? The leaves, branches, or even the trunk. That's not enough. You have to really hitting the problem, grab the opportunity of the roots, right? Because as roots alone is as important as the whole tree, right? That's where the force, if you will, AI, robotics, actually being made. Well, it's another way, a new productive force to re-industrialize, right? And the key is not so much of you have the technology or innovation of products. The key is how you use them to industrialize or re-industrialize your whole capacity, right? Doesn't matter which domain you are in, agriculture or mining, or timber, refinery, financials, obviously, the healthcare, scientific research, space. We're going to talk a bit from Hasselbeck's Elon Musk, right? You look at SpaceX, you look at the Optimus, right? But there's a lot of things going on, like Neuralink, right? And I don't have time to cover everything, but to me they are the same, right? If your mind is clear, you can see they're all integrated. Same thing, right? You can use them in many aspects, but essentially you have to create a new industrialized kind of reality, right? They're not separate, right? And on the China side, obviously, Huawei, what IBM, I didn't really figure it out yet. Localized thing, right? You can right away the local. You don't have to get a cloud. The whole stack of AI and robotics capacity. Right? To me, that's the future, right? In a regulated industry, local first is a strategic mandate, really, right? You don't want to put everything on the cloud, right? And even on the cloud, it has to be your managed cloud within your kind of control, not in a shared tenancy kind of thing, right? Because how can you guarantee that sovereignty of the data, of the algorithm, right? Of the whatever you at stake securely, right? And DeepSeek can come out 4.0. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of surprises. I've been analyzing the latest innovation. Right? and Alibaba, right? If you look at it, right, on this chart, right? Yeah, the Microsoft tried optimization, yeah, using the Azure to do multi-agent kind of thing, right? But NVIDIA also do a middle-range supply, give you on-the-edge computing. I'm using some of them, right? Like Spark, slightly skilled version for your. Not everybody is a big giant, right? The local businesses, startups, and, and Walmart, for example, some of the banks. How do you really build up such capacity? Full stack, right? But I believe haven't really found it out. NASA, right? They have some sort of moon and Mars kind of thing, right? I guess they're probably using Elon Musk's Grok AI, XAI kind of foundational model, right? That's what I mean by truly like what AI robotics are for, right? Your mind has to be clear. Your steps have to be very firm and strategic, right? Plug into the right hard problem, right? It's not a tool, it's not a toy, it's a real technology, real force to reckon with, right? It changes everything if you use it correctly, right? In an extreme environment like in a space, AI and robotics will work way better than humans, right? And again, we come back to all these fantastic things. And EU is really good. Like, Basel, we know that financial side. On AI, they have their act, right? I forgot the name. And the cryptos, they have Mika, whatever, right? England as well, right? But again, in this part, they have a governance model. Like not only just kind of proposal, but operationalize it. How do you make sure that AI and robotics are, really play responsibly, right? Okay, that's a positive thing, right? If you look at Alibaba, the Queen model, right? They already last week, right? They already build up the capacity, allow it to do that. Right? The open source model, potentially many of these world globally, right? They're going to embrace that approach, right? You want to be the owner of your own algorithm or your own robotic capacity, right? Your workforce, for example. You cannot like just rent something and half-heartedly owned by some others, right? They can pull a trigger remotely and freezing the whole workforce, right? That's not going to be long-term. You're talking about the security, doesn't matter in which level. It's going to be a risk, existential kind of risk, right? Yeah, I mean, so those, I think, when you look at it, right, you have to play safe. Innovation is good. You have to play safe. But how do you play safe? Not just the thoughts, right? You have to have a physical guardrails and mechanisms allow you to do that, right? So in a nutshell, we covered quite a few, right? Let me dig deeper, right? Just come back to Carney, the China deal, right? And look at it. Smiley Carney, right? He certainly is he's well trained, I'd say that, right? Not sure how much it's gonna work out, right? Here's what I'm looking at, right? On the chart, we're putting Canada as one of the player, right? See here. My thought is like Canada AI and robotics, right? I haven't seen any, nothing, zero. Right? I might be unfair, but it is zero. But yeah, the need or the way you do it, right? You need to build up the workforce to solve the problem, the real problem, right? Skilled labor kind of stuff, right? You need also, again, reindustrialization, but the instrumental part, you have to allow the things flow, right? It has to have an end-to-end loop that is a flying wheel, a loop, right? They need a new capital, right? New financial approach, right, to allow this to happen. Without it, it's just a dream. I mean, that's what I kind of targeting, right, if you will. So if you look at it, right, I make it bigger. I don't know, it makes sense to you, right? And what are we looking at? We're looking at physical AI, right? In my words, that's all my words, right? You can take it, but I don't know if you can build it. I'm building it, right? So physical AI, right? And sovereign robotics. Not sure if you get the term. I can dive in and explain later, right? You need human control because humans eventually accountable, right? No matter how capable your AI and robotics must be explainable, right? There are consequences, right? In the real world, right? And you have to make sure it's local, right? Like, in Canada or even on your device, local means, big scale or small scale, doesn't matter. That means energy supply, right? That means infrastructure, the whole stack thing. Run locally is important. Only when you need, you get on the cloud, right? If you don't have a nation's sovereignty, right, what is the point of talking about globalization? But certainly globalization is important, right? But you have to make sure the local manufacturers, industrial capacities there, like assembly, but kind of just hiking, right? You have to be real, right? Be realistic. Build up your AI robotics capacity. You can learn from everybody. You can integrate. You can be the third or whatever, right? I mean, you have to build up that. You have to be really, that's what I'm building, right? Enterprise domain, private model, right? Eventually, every enterprise will have their own private model, right? That's the future, right? Unfortunately, right? That's a new way of doing things. And all of this, right? You really need right? Make it bigger, right? That's what I'm building, right? And this is the illustration, right? What it is, if you will, right? That's what it is, right? You need a new financial way of facilitating the reindustrialization. You need a workforce, right? New workforce, like where human workers and robotic workers are going to collaborating together. Right? That's the new reality, believe it or not, right? And that's what I'm building. Right? Look at Elon Musk here. I talked about Gemini, DeepMind, right? Anthropic, OpenAI. They're all working. JP Morgan Stanley. They have a lot of applications there. You look at the China part, right? Huawei, DeepSeek, Alibaba. Everybody's like rushing in. You don't know what Canada is doing. Obviously, this gentleman here, I think Sir how's that base? Dennis, right? The DeepMind guy, and Jeffrey Hinton, right? HSBC doing a lot. As for EU have regulation, we mentioned, right? The 7 thing, if you will, you look at it, right? How's a bit OpenAI, Sam Altman, DeepMind, Dennis, right? Anthropic is like OpenAI, one or the other, right? Microsoft, obviously, NVIDIA, okay? Elon Musk, NASA part, right? And EU, right? That's what we're looking at. So, yeah. So you look at right? We can readjust it, but doesn't matter. I think you got so far, right? The goal is kind of re-industrialization for Canada. That's I don't know if it's the only opportunity, but it's really a part we have to be focusing on eyes on. Right? We kind of just talking forever without actually do anything. Yeah. So let's dig deeper. I think you got the gist what I'm trying to do, right? I mean, I can separate this into multiple, like if I want to impress anybody into nice talk, no. But I'm emphasizing making it happen, actually building it up, rather than impress you with the knowledge. You can search it out, find it, right? Find it online. You could do. Right? Let's dive deeper, right? The three themes, right? The AI robotics, what the advancement in terms of the technology innovation, governance applications, localization, whatever you name it, it's a lot. The second is the fundamental or the positioning, what you're going to solve the real problem in Canada, right? How. And third, emphasize, right, the financial capital, right? That's where Canada, have a shot, right? I don't know if you, and especially a financier, the background like Carney, probably know a lot, right? And I have a strategy of doing it. But again, what's the implications? Do not lock into, you're talking about the new crypto thing, right? You heard of the last week, I think, the suspension of Clarity Act in the US, right? Obviously, it's something that they need to work out, right? But the direction, right? If you looking at a new financial kind of market and payment facility, the large trans-regional, if you will, or trans-sectorial a modern way of making sure the money flows, right? Securely and then also in a slightly more managed way. You don't want to get into a lot of geopolitics, right? That is where you have to find a new way. And I think Canada has a huge shot there. That's one of my, attempt to build it up, right? And I don't know, it's the best, but certainly there's one way you can scale it up if you have the capacity, right? I can do what I can do, right? My time is limited and my capacity is very, very limited as well, right? Okay, let's dive into that. Three themes. We're going to iterate a lot, not to worry. Before we lose sight, right, from Dennis Hasadis to Elon Musk, right, looking at on the left is Hasadis, right, the protein, the DeepMind have a lot of innovations, which is make Google at least a really significant player. I mean, you think of where the IBM is drifting to irrelevance, right? And they also have strategy. To me, that's peripheral, right? And Microsoft making a strategic error, in my opinion, right? But looking at Google, right? You need a real brain. You need a real leader. Right? You have to hit on the real problem hard. It is very hard if you want to, take it easy or whatever, just leverage what others produce in a smart way. Then off you go. Yeah, you can be all that smart, but you're really avoiding the real hard problem, right? Okay. Yeah. On the right, obviously, is Elon Musk, right? Grandiose, right? As it is, but it says very aspirational, right? Go to Mars by 2029. I'm pretty sure it's going to postpone it again, right? If you remember, it was last year, right? But now it's 2029. You back up consciousness. Well, consciousness alone, I don't know if you have figured out, right? Is that totally an AI thing or computing thing? But again, economic infinity, abundance. Everybody is a billionaire. If that's the case, I don't know. Maybe you can solve the poverty, the universal high income. I mean, if it's that, why do you need a high income? Right? And what is the meaning of money? And the collapse of labor cost. In other words, you're making the humans irrelevant, right? Is that, then what's the point of having all this? Is have another stage in terms of civilization? It's slightly remote, but again, it's very aspirational, right? A lot of debates, pretty sure that it's worthy the thinking part, but I don't really believe that should be the focus, right? Yeah, we certainly do not want to get into the last part, right? And the operational metrics, the primary goal, right? Yeah, kinetics, problem, energy, the blue for solar, right? 2029 AGI, okay. On the left, right? It's more, to me, it's a more realistic view. That is the searching problem. That the high dimensional money. For you, I don't know if you read the paper from DeepSeek, specifically talking about how to do it. That's what I appreciate. Talk about is one thing, right? You see a lot of talk shows online, right? A lot of really eloquent speakers as well. But solving the problem and engineer the solution in reality, like, in hospitals, right? In aerospace, in financial domains, in the government, whatever you try to resolve, the manufacturing industry, do it, right? Do it, right? That's the real thing. Hybrid system 1 and 2 thinking, yeah, we all know that. No hallucination. Even humans hallucinate sometimes, right? The memory is not that reliable. They try to solve the memory problem and so on. The learnable universe. But are you sure you're using the right model to learn? I'm not so sure that you are. But again, it's very encouraging. Where we are in terms of AI and robotics in the embryonic stage, right? Very early, but we have far way to go. Our thinking, our model, and our approach will be every here and now, right? What the reincarnation require. We have to think again, have a new approach, new philosophy, new models, right? New mathematical kind of equations, maybe. Hopefully that's part of the deal, right? How to discover the health, the life, right? Protein, the genome. I read a lot there, but if I have the AI, pick up a phone. Sorry. Yeah, just pick up the phone, right? Let's continue. The energy strategy, right? AI design, fusion, and superconductor. Right? Again, the difference is that timeline to AGI, you look at it, is a 5 to 10 years. In my opinion, you need way longer, way more time than that. But, well, feel free to change the definition, right? What is AGI? Okay. Yeah, you probably need to do that. Okay. I mean, obviously, another view. Obviously, another view of what Dennis and Elon been doing, right? The deep mind side, more like an oracle, some recipe, right? And the Elon Musk and Tesla XAI is more focusing the outward journey, right? One is inward, one is out, right? Multiplanetary expansion, right? the core thesis here is that the definition of each AI has by it's been changing again, right? It's no longer measured by the Turing test, right? But by the epistemic sovereignty, right? Serving the laws of science, and kinetic acceleration is, right? Serving the laws of survival. Yeah, they're all good, right? The key insight, they're very, very inspirational, these two folks, right? The sovereign race, cooperation, the Google, DeepMind, XAI, Tesla, right? Accelerate exponentially. The public sector remains stark. Legacy infrastructure, we're entering an era of corporate sovereignty. That a great time. Okay? That's why my term is called sovereign robotics. Right? I view this physical AI as a transitional phase. Right? When you talk about physical, you give brain to the car, you give brain to the crane, right? Whatever machines, but eventually you think of robotics. Right? That's my solving robotics on the device and on the edge. You have to think of the workforce, the real collaboration, the robotic beings or the new workforces, the humans. That's where you need to focus your thoughts on. And also you need to engineer that reality, not just talk about it, right? You need brains, for sure. But also you need nerve system. You need the arms to work, to pick up. You need legs, feet to walk. But you also need fingers, right? And the skins to touch, textile, right? Sensor, eyes, ear, you name it. As again, I don't encourage and I don't believe every robotic thing or being should be like a human, right? Have ears, eyes, and face and everything, right? Or limbs and body. It can be anything, but the advantage of the human alike, a humanoid kind of robots, is that we are human, right? We're not dogs, right? Maybe the robotic being, the intelligence, not even as intelligent as a dog, right? But then to me, it cannot be, somewhat in a small part in an edge way, right? As intelligent as a human, right? Because you cannot think as a dog. Right? You think I'm smarter than a dog? Are you sure? It's not a comparison, right? You just, particular way to measure it seems to be more intelligent. But not really, right? The nose part, it smells way better than your humans, right? The dogs view the world very different. You don't know that. And the actual researcher, it's not dog trying to research the AI robotics, right? It's human. We are. The internal thought process, the external force, they have to interconnect. They have to connect to be one. Then you can innovate. You cannot just mimicking or simulating, right? It doesn't work. It works to a certain extent. If you solve a really hard problem, it's better to be one, integrate. Right? That's the advantage, I'm thinking. But certainly, again, you don't have to perform everything like a human. Right? It's not required. Right? You can make robotic dogs. Doesn't matter, right? Or just the arm making a coffee. Do you really need a human figure like a robot sitting there making coffee or talking, doing many things together? You just make a coffee maker, right? Even a coffee maker machine, you don't have to make it more intelligent. That's it, right? Same thing, right? Rocket in the car, robot taxi is coming up, right? In a lab, right, you have a lot of scientific research needs. Okay, that's what I'm trying to comment on, right? Again, just quickly cursory review. Right? In Hathaway's science is a search space and discoveries again. Okay, I call this person Sir Gemini. Certainly, he's doing more than that. Right? AlphaGo previously, now Gemini. He got into the new. I think last week released the new reasoning model or something, right? That's encouraging, right? And Elon, on the other side, is, there's the clinical DeepMind. Moving beyond the whole session, look at hybrid architecture. Okay, that's for system 1, the generator, right? And then system 2, the verifier, right? But if you read the DeepSeek papers, we go way beyond this if you go to China, right? I know the chip is one a gap still, but in terms of the application, actually engineering theory, you probably should go there and learn rather than reinvent, right? If you can, right? That's where I really think Canada has it. If you can somehow bridge or integrate or triage, provide a third space, right? You open a lot of doors to benefit the whole planet Earth, right? We talk about there's human species in the world, right? Then now here's provocative conjecture. If nature is compressed information, the universe is learnable. Of course, it's learnable, right? But how are you going to learn it, right? It's purely through mathematical equations or from the physical theory that you think you have get everything. Then I can assure you that's laughable, right? But I leave to you to find some about it, right? There are a lot of things you don't know yet. Okay. Don't be so sure. Okay? Survival. Okay. Nature is not random noise. It's product of selection. It is compressed information. Sure. And our brain runs on very limited electricity supply. But don't think electricity is the only energy, right? Don't make a mistake. When you try to make robotic brain only running on electricity, it may not work. Okay. The compression doesn't mean that the consciousness is compressed your experience or your calculation ability. Think again, may not be, right? The view evidence. I mean, not try to mislead you. Go read a few text. There's a lot of text in the Buddhism library. I'm pretty sure other religions. Don't focus on religion so much. Get it, the political side. The real scientific side, right? Science is not alone, like not a new innovation in a way, right? There's a lot of wisdom been there, and you have to look in an angle, like a scientific angle approach. Don't go into the superstitious part, right? Or metaphysically, right? Scientifically, read it, rethink, right? No, the view evidence, view is one of the product, right? The fluid dynamics, same dynamics, right? Same dynamics modified in an article, a paper published by the DeepSeek. The same mathematical or physical thing. The rockets, like the supersonic rocket on the sky, the same thing. Right? In the dynamics of a fluid pixel, right? By watching that, right? Reverse engineer the source code. And, the P and the no P gamble, right? The cost of verification job, perfect simulation. Nothing perfect, but again, it's approximation, right? Zero marginal cost, right? I mean, now we get on the Elon side. Again, why it's kind of, I don't know. They have a lot of natural things. Can you not try to use AI, right? It's a new possibility, right? Other than going to Mars, what your northern territories, right? A lot of habitats not that friendly to humans, and maybe we can think about that rather than like what Elon Musk is called the Mars, right? We have a lot to explore, right? And the single point of failure, the Mars, the backup, right? Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time, but again, cursory review. Elon been through that sedimentary layers of the state and found the future, right? And the magic money computers, right? Okay, relax the mainframe, running ancient code, and not to disturb billions of minimal oversight. The strategic outcome, right? The immune system, right? If you can develop a immune system to a financial crisis, right? Maybe you could try that, right? Yeah, again, different views, cost of energy, the economy, universal high income, the truth, the curiosity, the beauty, right? The economics, right? Abundance, no matter how you pronounce it, it's ideology. Right? And another view, external kinetics, right? Again, my experience driving or now sleeping in a FSD driven car, right? It's very impressive. Road taxis come out, right? I might explore a bit more like the Chinese approach and the Elon Musk FSD approach in terms of the autonomous driving, right? It's kind of robotics, right? That's what I meant, the physical AI. You look at this. This is water. AI is the older fish, right? That sees the ubiquitous information human misses. True, like dogs can see more, smell more as well, right? Can we simulate a wave perfectly? Wow, good question, right? That's what DeepMind and Sir Gemini try to explore, right? And on the other side, simulation and navigation, the Musk external kinetics, right? The SpaceX, the rocket, calibration using the hardcore gaming, and to prove the brain can process the Neuralink, right? Kinetic loops. Can we navigate around about Mumbai? That's very physical, right? It's not easy if you've been in Mumbai before. And one builds a model of the world model, what labs, Fifi Lee, maybe Yang LeCun, many others, right? The other builds a tool to move through it. Other tool is a partner. Again, it's comparison and the energy paradox, right? Serving the primary bottleneck to AGI. Both doctrines agree that energy availability is a hard limit on scaling the intelligence. The alchemist, right? The knowledge problem, right? Okay. The law of physics, the events of fusion, that's how they solve the energy problem, right? On the other side, China, right? Logistic problem, right? Square miles of photovoltaics, right? If you go to China, you've probably seen that with your own eyes. But I don't know if you can copy that or you need to copy that. I think Elon and the US should approach a different way. I'm gonna probably make a separate presentation, not mix everything too much together, right? But that's a problem, interesting one, right? Look at the industrial solar dominant choke point, the context to cluster the US, it's 0.5 gigawatts of power, and building the domestic compute mode, yeah, that's strategic. What about Canada again, right? Even if global supply chains collapse, the XAI group remains capacity to reach AGI, the rise of corporate sovereignty, that the state fails to keep pace. Okay, I mean, I don't know, like if you read enough, right? Remember like 150 years ago, there was another school of thought, like the friend of Karl Marx, right? Engels, right? The German guy. I don't know if I pronounce German correctly. If you read his books on the family, nation, corporations, and capital stuff, right? You probably understand what Elon is talking about. It's conservation, distribution, whatever you could accumulate. Yeah? That leads to the structure of family, the governance model, the nation building, the national security, what you mentioned, economics, right? And the capital, the financial markets, if you will, industrialization. Now we are 150 years later. We need to rethink. We need a lot of thinkers, right? Not only the scientists or engineers, we are robotics, right? We need thinkers, real thinkers, to rethink the problem that we are surrounded today. Right? This is one of them. And I think in a way, if you look, let's say 100 years later, or 200 years later, or 500 years later, you look back, what would you say that Elon Musk is doing? The historical positioning. Right? Not a legacy, but what he's doing. Do you understand? I mean, we don't need everybody to become Dennis Hathaway's or Elon Musk, but we certainly need a lot more people who take on the solve the real hard problem. Right? This is one of them. When I talk about workforce, this is what I mean. That's the integration of family and organizations, businesses, corporations, sovereign nations, or globalization, whatever you name it, or deglobalization, fragmentation. This is more of the technological problem, more than the political problem, more than the economic thing, right? It is fundamental to, before Mars, this is the problem, right? If you replicate the same model, same thing on Mars, even you replicate it across the whole Milky Way, all the galaxies. So what? Same problem, right? You didn't solve it, right? Any case, that's beyond the point. We are robotics, but we can, some other ways, we're going to talk about it from different tone, right? But that's slightly more than just AI and robotics, right? Let's close it up. And before we move on, the jacked intelligence gap, physical, right? The coding math, coding is important, at least to the enterprise for now. And the work model, the Genie, right? The simulation, and the other side, the fleet data, right? The gap, 2026, right? AGI requires both the ability to dream, simulate, and the ability to act. The gap, right? The physical gaps, the physical tasks, loading the dishwasher. Yeah, that's simple enough, but also complex enough. Horizon, I want to see 2030, where is Canada, right? Really, international economy, global demand, where is Canada? Where is Canada, AI, and robotics? That's what I'm trying to build. I don't know. I need some help, right? Whoever has a few billion, right? We can make it a $1 trillion, reality, right? The physical economy, transport, energy, labor, space, Hasid's, human, the scientist, the philosopher. Okay, they're all philosophers in a way, right? Philosophy doesn't have to be abstract. It's very physical. It's down to the nitty-gritty, nuanced engineering, right? It's part of the mathematical equation, right? Like the large language model. There's a philosophy around it if you read it, right? There are neurologies, the anatomy. You really have to read a little if you don't understand what I'm talking about, right? The Neuralink, the Mars, right? Anyway, I like this picture, right? So the man and the hand. Interesting, right? Mask, the salvation, right? The husband's salvation as well through knowledge. We cannot choose one. We need oracle to tell us how to build fusion. No oracle, man. You have to do it yourself, right? You have a brain. Why don't you use it? And you have your hands, and you need to engineer and build it. You have everything you need. Okay? You just need to work. Don't just talk, right? First of all, you have to think through, know what you're doing. Yeah, I really appreciate. We're talking about Canada, but we're using these two gentlemen, if I may call them gentlemen, right? And gentlemen, and whatever you call it, right? In a way that's acceptable. Hopefully, it's not offense. If it is, my apology. It's not intentional. Now we turn into another kind of number three, if you will. Look at what is the reality there. Before we move on to the financial capital side, a new proposal for Canada to build AI robotics, right? To be part of it, to be listed one of the 100 on my chart, right? And here is where the Chinese strategy, right? And also mine. You need to engineering the last mile or millimeter, right? The narrative bridge, right? The backbone. Okay. And you need to building the integrated the flash, right? If you look at the domestic solution stack and the overall, there are a lot. We're going to dive into, if we have time, the many things you need to really, really dive deep in your understanding. Right? You have to have the energy for sure, but that's not enough. Right? You have to have a coordinated, you have mobilized the majority, not just a few organizations. Right? The whole industry must be in, the whole agriculture, service sector, hospitals, banks, right? Everything. Otherwise, how can you think you have 100 smart people to fight and win over that billion, smart people, engineers, workers, thinkers? Right? How is it possible? I mean, mathematically, unless you're very strong in your belief, right? Otherwise, that is part of your hallucination, isn't it? Because, physical, you have to get physical, get real. But in that case, before that physical, you have to know the other slightly not so visible, intangible, tangible thing. Not intangible is very easy to understand, but how to build it up, how to navigate the regulatory and compliance, the new finance model allow the cash flow in a global scale where the AI robotics they need funding, they need the products and the sales, the transactions, the industrialization need not only the movement of information data, but they also need the money, the commodity, right? The product, the physical stuff. Physical, is physical, right? It's not. It has to be function as a whole, right? Whole stack, right? Let's look at that. This is how we frame it, right? Talking about the new partnership, what we call China and Canada, right? But in the long term, Canada and the US will be even more important. You need to formulate a new relationship, right? Not a right away. It is a new configuration you need to really engineer. You need to build it up, right? And AI and robotics are one of the leverage you have. Finance is another, right? The third is obviously a physical asset. Think about strategically. But that's my proposal in a way, right? You have to be a little strategic. You pivot. You have to navigate the global kind of divergence, right? You look at the opportunities really for Canada. Unlike United States, the regulatory is a quagmire, right? They suspended the clarity, right? Infinite postponement. Obviously, they have different tenets, the factor ban, tokenized equity, the traditional banks, right? And versus the new cryptocurrency payment. Right? They're going to pivot the traditional contract model. They also ban the sort of central bank digital currency, which Canada not yet, at least not. I haven't seen that, but China encouraged that. Right? So, what is your role, like Canada? That's where I'm building up. Right? You look at the bridging factor, right? The data capital bridge. That's where China is going to propose the Shanghai Exchange and Hong Kong, Singapore, surrounding areas, Middle East, right? They're all part and parcel of the same thing, if you will, right? You think of India, Russia, Brazil, and other players, right? Canada just not everything. You cannot just look at one view, right? North America or US alone. You need to figure out where Canada is, what role you should play. Right? As I said, the movement of technology, people, investment, hardware, products, they all need the facilitation of new financial. The capital flow has to be there, right? In Canada, right, the tariff is one thing, but the strategic trilateral kind of thing, you need. I don't understand anything like political side, but we believe we have think tanks, we have strategic kind of investment somewhere. Don't overlook it, right? Look carefully. This, to me, is as a nation, is an opportunity not to be missed. You cannot miss it. It's too significant, right? But let's dive in a bit detail before we lean on it. A great divergence. You have to unlock it. You have problems for sure, but you have more solutions. Right? Like AI and robotics not give you just solutions, give you new approach. Right? You understand? You have to think differently. You have to really systematically approach it. Right? You have to take really down to earth physical steps. And so this deserves a lot of separate and comprehensive views, but this is the cursory kind of glancing through this from 2025, then we go to 2026, right? If you will, it's more like a policy as a financier, if you work in this field, what would you think, right? Don't miss it. Unlocking in terms of, you have to navigate the regulatory clarity, right? It's one of the institutional financials, right? It is quite a shift, a lot of barriers, right? You have to navigate the path, right? The banking side, the financial markets, right? How do you make the bridge, right? The large scale real world asset, which Canada is really rich, right? Tokenization approach, right? Doesn't mean it's not a technology thinking, right? You need comprehensive legislation. More than that, you need to operate it, right? Direct it, right? How you actually make it happen. The policy and personnel, right? You need talents. You need a lot of lawyers and financiers and engineers working together. A lot of consulting, strategy making, right? the banking side, right? You need to reinvent, to a certain extent, right? The custody and I'm going to explain my proposal, right? But I need money to build it up, but at least I have a very clear thoughts, right? Comprehensive, rooted in reality, right? And trilaterally in a way, right? And we talk about the Clarity Act, right? Where is Canada? I'm pretty sure, right? We can review that. Right? There's another bill, right? Unlocking institutional banking, right? And if you remember that here, policy and personnel, institutional banking, right? 3 is legislative roadmap, where we are in a quagmire right now in terms of the US, right? Then you have to have the global context, the pivot, the robotics, right? I call it sovereign robotics, physical AI, new workforce, right? You need new financial capital, in a way, plainly, like if you can build Canada as the bridge, as the capital of or center or hub, whatever you name it, or many linguistics in Canada, right? Come up with a new term, right? Not impress me, but calculate the market, right? The future, the world, right? This is what we try to piece together. This is just lay the framework in the future we're going to dive into, right? Before we leave this, we have to unlock the ecosystem, right? We have to build a new ecosystem. Canada has a strong positioning, right? In terms of the real world asset. Don't just so rigid. You have not even think about it. You read it, then you can just already protesting and complaining. It's not going to help you much, right? The adoption across the world is very problematic. A lot of regulatory minefield you have to navigate. Right? In 2026, they try to build some sort of infrastructure in the US, talking about, but again, there's a lot of questions. It's going to be not that easy, right? But again, you look at bonds and products, carbon credit, and real estate, treasuries, and private credit, right? The convergence of regulatory clarity, the institutional-grade banking infrastructure, and the maturability technology, and the geopolitics, right? The fragmented supply chain, right? The advancement, aggressiveness, the AI and robotics, right? You need fundamentally a new financial system, right? And I would say that that maybe under the leadership of Carney, right? At least he's a financier who knows the thing better than most of us, right? Because most of the population, do something that you can leave it as a legacy, right? I don't know if you could become an AI and robotics engineer, but you could be a good financier, right? If you push Canada to the new capital of new finance, you made your name into the history book, right? In a beneficial way, not just benefit yourself, right? Benefit the country or the nation or the region or the humankind at large, right? That's what I'm looking to. As a PM level, your contribution should be more significant than the individual, right? You have the responsibility. Okay, that's my opinion. There are many different ways to look at it, but if you do this kind of path, we're not going to get too much into it anymore, right? Anti-money laundering, they need a lot of rework in the credit risk, key risks, right? You look at it, right? Silvergate and signature, right? Stable coins, Right? You have the Coinbase, the support from the Clarity Act, right? The global context, right? European Union, they have the MiCA regulation, e-money token rules, Asian Pacific, Hong Kong, Singapore, they have crypto frameworks with stablecoin licensing, renminbi internationalization, Middle East, obviously, I mentioned Dubai, Abu Dhabi, the Vera, UAE, EDGM, staking sandbox, right? A lot of things already in play. The money is sort of institutional, traditional service, technological, institutional pilot, the field, right? Is already JP Morgan. We know that the GPM coins, right? HSBC, they tokenize the deposit, and BNY, the custody services. We're going to look at each and every of them. These are significant, right? The question is, again, Canada. Where do I see some, yeah, you might heard of some of the small plays, right? They're more like try to impress people than the real, right? It's nothing significant at all. And permission blockchains, tokenized deposit real-time payment, the traditional service side, right? Deposit and account, crypto collateral loans and custody. This money aspect, right? This is just lay out the framework. We're going to dive into this deep dive because this is what I'm building as part of the business. Hopefully, it is the China and Canada. I don't know, maybe just a little fad. 3 months, a couple of years, then go, right? You never know, right? And it depends. We have to be, keep our mind open, right? Again, it's very divergent. Okay? We talk about it, right? There's many things we go quickly, right? The U.S. and Canada is a bridge, right? They proposed some sort of, the neutral corridor, right? And become a bridge. Certainly, you have to look into that. I don't want to spend more time. It's already over an hour. You can look it up. A lot of things already online, right? Disruption, suspension, the quagmire, as mentioned, January 2026. They put it on hold indefinitely. Stablecoins, USDC, and that's quite significant, right? And the yield wall, the banking lobby successfully blocked, right? The equity ban, right? Essentially the digital asset security uses federal clearing agencies, right? Since blockchain settle peer-to-peer, this creates a de facto ban, right? Meaning not decentralized. You have to go through the centralized, clearing part, right? Again, this is very significant. The red lines prohibited, the green lines, the China side, they don't allow you to do Bitcoins whatsoever, right? No ICOs, no RWA tokenization, strictly illegal, right? But the green light is the data asset. The interim propositions accounting the treatment of the enterprise data resources by the state sanctioned data exchange. That's very encouraging if you understand. It's a fifth factor of production, they call it, right? The data. They financialize it actually, right? They regulate it. And the strategic pivot is rebranding the asset tokenization to data asset capitalization. Think about it. This is quite strategic. We talked about it, resource, financing, registration, right? And again, the ECNY, that's the Chinese currency, sanction-resistant Arbitrage, right? U.S. context banned by law, right? SWIFT, and Tariff, again, Canada, they manage in the Carney deal create a tariff arbitrage the opportunity, and it means the strategic value is Canada going to act as a demilitarized zone for industrial technology. We can legally import Chinese component to Vancouver, right, part of Canada, and the textile of the existence in Seattle, right? See, long term from Shenzhen manufacturing cost export, right? The batteries and the panels and the AI robotics things, ocean freight, Vancouver international hub, the neutral zone, the militarized zone, whatever you call it, tariff, NVIDIA sensors, final assembly, right? Then the export origin, CETA export, and to the European Union's United States, and the rules of origin compliance. Right? Yeah, that's what we mean by strategic. But again, I mentioned many more times, Canada is going to shaking and shifting and smartly, skip that, and they're going to play a lot of smart moves and pressure. Right? The arbitrage, the hybrid intelligence model, right? And the DeepSeek for low cost, not only low cost, more innovative, right? I don't know if you may not want to admit it, but that's fine. Right? I don't know why you got impression. And I believe I know boss of the world, right? The compliance, right? The engine, and on the other side, the refined result, right? The enterprise ChatGPT, GPT-5, the high reasoning capacity, the cloud-based brand hosting worthiness, the fees, right? Whatever the compliance arbitrage is significant OPEX reduction by routing backend tasks. DeepSeek, maintaining that, sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is one thing. Data residence, a lot of regulatory complexities, right? You have to navigate. And if you look at it, operational multi-agent system, right? Like I think Baidu, right? If I mentioned last week, I don't know if I mentioned it. They released this multi-agent system, like the acquisition of miners. I don't know if it's blocked or under examination from China, but that's Meta, Mark Zuckerberg. Right? We talked about it. You have these multi-agent systems. Everybody try to catch up. You look at the OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft, aggressively, right? And certainly the infrastructure side, NVIDIA is building it. Elon Musk is rushing to that quickly. A lot of work, like Google, I mentioned that. There are many others. This is one area, sort of innovation. The new startups also have a shot there. But getting it real has to be domain specific, cannot just be a theory of technology stack, right? You have immediate deployment, right? You can use whatever, you can use Python, LangChain, you can enhance it later to be more compliant. The cycle of execution, a lot of stuff, right? Immediate, we're going to follow through and deep dive in. Right? A great divergence is failure. Right? We're going to innovate where the path is clear and treat where the doors are open, right? There's a phrase there, the token insurance workstream. The China side is a data asset pilot, right? And then the commission, Vancouver, the green light, the project Sentinel, right? That's my thing, right? I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm going to build it up, right? Okay, let's take this, look at the same thing from a different light, and then we can close it. Okay, here's another view, more visual, right? Implementation for 2026. It's the building up, picking up some pace, right? The U.S. Clarity Act, they put it on a hold, and the market values in terms of the RWA, real world assets, kind of 8 billion. I believe it could be more, right? And then the M-braid surge, right? The China-led cross-border platform, right? They're on the EU, they have MiCA regulation. The US have Property Act grants legal status, right? The MSCI evaluates digital asset treasury, right? And then prohibits retail CDBC, right? You look at the digital currency flow, right? HBC launches the tokenized deposit, right? A lot of movement, but I don't know if you see that. It is not because of AI, but it's going to be kind of accelerated. Not for AI, but initially that's what AI robotics is going to be part of the reason that you need the capital flow, right? You need the technology integrated. They need the products, the supply chain to find a way through the regulated, especially in the regulated domains, industries, right? And Canada has a strategic advantage there if you use it correctly. And time is of essence. Right? You cannot wait. Maybe next year it's going to be different, right? Action, right? So there's another view, the great maturation, infrastructure integration, the new geopolitical reality, right? Regulations, institutionalization, and geopolitics, right? Strategic, right? We look at, I kind of searching through, right? Again, the same Europe, the virtual set of asset staking framework, right? That's in Asian Pacific side, right? And the parameter expanding, right? You look at the catch-up mode, right? they call it substance over form kind of approach, right? So we need to watch a lot of rulemaking legislation, the Clarity Act, the Genius Act, and the anti-CDBC, that's from America, right? There are 33 billion breakout, right? The key players, BlackRock, we had that. And we need to look into that for sure, right? But the automated interest payments via the smart contract, right? The real-time settlement, the transparency, the golden record, the immutable ledger. We all know that kind of thing. The tokenization use case, okay? Not a hype, is real. And the credit deposits, equities, right? And commodities, ESGs, right? The carbon, that tokenized credit, create the audit trail of that, preventing the double counting, right? The real estate slowly fractionalized right now, especially in Canada, it's pretty bad. And if you know what I'm talking about, many big investors pulling the phone out, right? For good reason. Right? And can you turn it around? How do you resolve it? You know, that's real questions in impact. A lot of people, the big population, the middle class, right? All in it, right? And then the different models, right? And the treat buy, stress back, the bottom of the settlement layer, right? Tokenized deposit, HSBC, JP Morgan, the walled garden kind of thing, right? On the other side is open network, right? Private sector, USDC, PayPal, right? Public blockchains, open interoperability, and authentic, agentic thing, AI robotics play a huge role there, right? DeFi and HSBC, and that's why we need sovereign robotics, right? Really regulated. The bank strategy at HSBC, they are private blockchains, bank grade security, right? The killer app is the bear interest, the bear interest, unlike some regulated stablecoins, right? I like, right? HSBC expanding the US, the Middle East, right? The corporate settlement, right? Target tokenization, and it's going to be coming out quite a bit, right? The India has a new payment system. I'm pretty sure very soon they're going to adapt into the core, because they are really managed by the Google side, the American financial side, right? They're part of the whole system. The market side, the market structure, the index enrichment, right? The new rules, whatever, right? You can look into that. Wall Street View, the crypto, the federal, a lot of issues, right? And we can look at it, how this works out. I like this very telling, right? The digital currency code war, right? The two rails side by side, the dollar block, right? US, EU, private stablecoin, another side. This is the disconnect, the dotted line in the middle, the Arbitrage block, right? It's also strategic, the project Arbitrage, right? Arbitrage, right? UB, UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Thailand part, strategic insight, right? The shift, international settlement, right? The goal not to displace the dollar, but to incrementally erode it. I don't know what is the goal. Maybe that's the fact. Right? January, already 55 billion. It's going to grow a lot, right? Dominance, right? The yuan, right? Because physical, the manufacturing equipment, industrial products, right? The real AI technology components, right? Like iPhones, robots, cars, right? They need people move around, talents, capital, certainly, right? How can you not see that, right? And that's where Canada can play a role, right? Some sort of demilitarized, whatever you call it. You have many good words, but make it happen is not easy, right? China, the policy, the focus in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, that's why it's more like a analog kind of thing, right? They can switch it on, switch it off, right? Very maintainable, right? That's one way of managing systematic risks, right? This is what I call strategic, right? Risk resilience, right? The cyber and state theft, right? And the compliance friction, the sunrise issue, time, right? The clock, regulatory arbitrage, impact dumping of the unregulated stable coins, right? You have to sovereignty, right? Financially, economically, you also need sovereignty. Right? You do not want anybody to take over your central bank kind of rule. You have to regulate it, right? It's part of the sovereignty, right? 2026, the battle for liquidity, right? The new normal, and the Genius Act finalization, right? Hopefully 2026 July, and the trade by the convergence, the charters, right? The dollar block and Arbitrage, right? Don't forget there are Russians, there are Indians, there are Brazilians, there are many other parts in the Middle East, right? It is a global, right? I know we're not chanting for globalization anymore, but money flows, right? One way or the other. The product Arbitrage is unlikely to challenge dollar dominance, right? It is a strategic protective, risk management thing, right? Yeah, this is where we have to close soon, but to find a place for Canada, right? We look back and we look forward, right? The global landscape, right? Europe, Genius Act in the US, NICA in Europe, right? The UAE and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we all have Singapore, Hong Kong, the stability gap, right? The systematic risks, right? A lot of theft, a lot of cyber threats, right? And the crypto is a new thing, right? A lot of AI and robotics involved, whether you believe it or not. It's not just cryptography, right? It's real engineering, real technology involved, blockchains as well. The stability, stable coin is not that stable, right? The constitution, the bank liquidity, right, could be kind of squeezing, right, deposits, right? It's, you don't want a bank run, do you? Right? You're going to threaten the sovereignty of the bank, right? The cross-border policy fragmentation, the uniform policy, right, ideal, but reality is fragmented. The implementation friction, the Nika task, right? The governance we mentioned just last week, they put some operational directives, right? Very, very detailed, right? I would encourage you to read it through, and if you are in the domain, right? The evolving financial crime networks, yeah, literally, dark eyes and stuff, right? Okay, we have to close. This is what we have been talking through, the Canada AI and robotics, right? Overall, my opinion, right, you need to use the strategic position of Canada to build up your AI and robotics to at least achieve three things, right? The instrument, they're also the goal, right? You need to build up the new workforce, right? Thinking of the robotic being part of your workforce, right? To solve your fundamental problem, the small population, the scarcity, right? Not enough, insufficient skilled labor, right? How do you solve that? Think about especially the aging and thing, right? They have huge resources. Think about the physical part, the real world. That's why you have a strong. You're sitting on a golden mountain. Not sure if you realize that. But how do you really make it flow, right? Make it part of the new financial kind of. Think about it. You can become the new capital of the financial world, right? Leveraging AI and robotics, and for the AI and robotics, right? It's just one example. It's not the whole thing, but it's the important force you have to reckon with. Right? Then you need to do somehow, right? Some part of it, not everything, but re-industrialization. Remember, you are power, right? The industrialized. You still have Bombardier, many aspects of that. Still very strong, but you have kind of dance in a lot of red tape right now, not only externally, right, but also internally. The thinking, right, the way you're doing is kind of, I don't know, it maybe rethink that, right? Yeah, essentially we look at the three aspects, the robotics, the simplification, Canadian's position, and also the financial part. As people flow, as the capacity, commodity, and component of AI robotics technology product flows, internationally, globally, distribution, right, the supply chain. You need capital flow, right? You need money to integrate, to facilitate, and that's where we look at the real world asset kind of. Just one view doesn't mean, right? You might have new banking, new financial markets, who knows, right? And AI robotics also the means and also the aim, right? You look at it depends, right? But rather than talking about it, I just try to build it up, right, in a way. We look at Dennis here, right? Dennis has this, right? And we look at Elon Musk. Right? Let's see, where's Elon Musk? Here, right? Yeah, here's Elon Musk. You look at Carney, right? Elon Musk used to be Canada, right? Remember the early days, right? Look at the guy, right? Any case, it's already an hour and a half. We need to close it up. But we're going to dive into, we mentioned a lot, right, today. And yeah, rather than just talk about it, actually try to build it up, right? And okay, that's where we are focusing on Canada. Yeah, robotics, the new workforce, new financial capital, re-industrialization, right? We look at the physical AI, sovereign robotics, human control, in my words, right? And the local run time on the device or locally, regionally, whatever you mean it, different scale. You need some sort of, in my opinion, operating system, a new operating system, business of enterprise, right? Domain private models, right? Vertical integration, not just try to boil the whole ocean, right? I mean, as long as you are as genius as Dennis or as Elon Musk, right? As powerful, or you have a deep pocket like Mark, right? Yeah, but again, you have your strengths, right? You don't have to be anybody else, right? And you probably don't want to be anybody else, right? But in any case, we'll look into more, certainly. The regulations, we'll look at that. Yeah, there's, oh, thank you. Well, we're going to continue.
对酒当歌，人生几何？譬如朝露去日苦读。